Hello and welcome to this Stageworthy Podcast live stream. I'm Phil Rickaby, the host of Stageworthy. The Toronto Fringe is in full swing. Reviews are out, so I wanted to talk to some theater reviewers about the 2022 Fringe and its return to an in-person festival. So just keep in mind that we're streaming live on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. There you may be able to chat with us. Keep in mind though that there's a lag of about 30 seconds, and so when we say something, you hear it 30 seconds later. Stageworthy is a weekly podcast about Canadian theater hosted by me since 2016. New episodes come out every Tuesday. So I'm just going to bring myself back here, and I want to introduce introduce our reviewers. Let's go clockwise from me along the top row, starting with Sam. Say hello and who you're writing for.
Hi, I'm not actually writing for anyone. I'm doing small reviews on Twitter. So I'm writing for myself.
And you are?
I am Sam Mooney, and I was, for many years, a senior writer with Mooney on Theater.
Thank you. Steve.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm Steve Fisher. For many years, I was a reviewer for Torontoist, AP Club. Did a little bit. I think I did some Fringe for Count once or twice. At the moment, I'm a reviewer emeritus, so this is the first year I'm seeing the festival for my own pleasure, and I'm at 27 shows in.
Nice. Armin.
Hi, yes, sorry, I was trying to tech things there. My name is Armand Reinzade. I am actually a performer by trade, but this is my first year reviewing for the festival, and I'm actually in the new young reviewers cohort at the Toronto Fringe this year. So I'm writing for Intermission Magazine and also for the Fringe internally on their Toronto Future Voices page this year.
Nice. So Armin, I know that you have to run. You're actually in a pinch hit for us, and you've jumped in at the last minute, and you have another show that you're going to see at 8. So I'm going to start off with you, and the first question I think that I wanted to ask you is, what are your standout shows of the Fringe so far?
Absolutely. So I've seen 15 shows so far, keeping in mind that I still have a 9 to 5. Otherwise, I would have tried to see more, but I would have to say that X and the Spirit at Daniel Spectrum was absolutely phenomenal in terms of the set and the direction and the performances and the script. X and the Spirit was brilliant. The Garden of Allah was also beautifully executed. The entire team there was incredibly strong. And there's been so much great work this year. And I understanding that the pandemic has knocked artists off their kilter a little bit, as someone who has done shows in the past few months, it's definitely surreal jumping back onto stage, but definitely Don Valley Girls are a wonderful sketch comedy troupe. Elias and Zia Rasul's Moral Girl was also phenomenal. A bunch of great work at the Fringe this year.
Are there shows that have surprised you? Shows that you went to and you hadn't heard of the performer, or the show was new to you that sort of jumped out and surprised you?
Absolutely. There's 2 shows that did that for me. The first one was X and the Spirit, because I didn't really understand, not that I didn't understand, I just didn't know what to expect walking into it. And I was completely taken away by how well executed it was and how engaged the audience was for a piece of that nature. It was really, really brilliant, and it felt like it gave tangible tools on how to start discussions and move forward. Right. So I was shocked by that. And the show that I just saw was called Dead Broke, where I bumped into Steve and got pulled into this. Lovingly, I'm so glad to be here. But yes, the cast of Dead Broke was phenomenal, and doing thriller, scary types of plays are very, very hard to execute in a live setting, and to do it with the limited tech time that Fringe shows get and the limited resources that you have within a venue, I thought it was very, very well polished. So it completely surprised me. I just was going to see a friend and was blown away overall.
I have noticed sort of a resurgence lately of genre in the theater, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's horror. And to be honest, I'm thrilled by that. I'm thrilled by seeing that sort of thing on the stages, partially because I think it, in some ways, the theater community tends to see itself, the theater world sees itself as very pretentious and above all that stuff. But it is also something the audiences want to see, and I think it's something that we can really, it's a sandbox that we can play in a way that hasn't been played in the past. As far as like the return to Fringe, how has it been coming back for you, Armin? Have you seen have there been issues that you've noticed? Have there been like rocky moments, or just generally, how do you feel about how it's going, what the new venues, things like that? Tell me about what you think there.
Overall, I think there's been a really smooth dive back into things. Everyone's really just hit the ground running. And I will say that as an artist, not as a reviewer, but I produced a show independently with my own theater collective in May. And for the first time in 3 years, we didn't sell out. And which like hit me as a producer because it was a smaller venue. And I was like, oh, what? And I'm starting to feel that like when I'm in spaces, shows that would have been sold out last week are still not quite there yet because it's harder to get audiences back into the seats from my experience. Like I'm like, that's really a struggle because people have different comfort levels in terms of the pandemic and whether they'd like to be indoors with others and things of that nature. So I'd say that the biggest barrier, besides letting people know about what's great and having the theater critics to release information about the shows, which is being done through new cohorts like New Young Reviewers, I'd say just getting audiences back in the seats and driving right back into it is something that still I think is going to take a little bit more time. And I will say that the Fringe community building that typically happened, I noticed we sort of lost in the digital era, and it's been lovely to see that back. So the era of shows going after their show and saying, hey, also check out XXXXX, and that's not a show, just like all the different shows, and giving audiences opportunities to like shout themselves out. And I know that after the Garden of Allah, Rebecca Perry got on stage and was like, hey, if anyone in the house has a show, yell it now. Let our audience be your audience. So that's been a really wonderful thing to see and feel, because I feel like it really embraces the Fringe spirit and the collaborative energy behind the Fringe.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, Steve, same question to you. What have you seen, or in terms of like the general thoughts about the Fringe so far? What have you seen that's been working, not working? Let me know what are your thoughts so far.
In terms of things, this isn't so much things working, but things I appreciated. The Rumors, the lawyers show, only sold to 60% capacity. And I appreciated that. I think that there are lots of people who still aren't comfortable with jam-packed spaces, and that's something that makes them feel more comfortable. I've noticed masking is an issue in some venues, and we really can't expect Fringe volunteers to be the mask police. And I have to say, as an old, responsible person, I just don't friggin' get it. What the fuck is it with people that they won't wear masks? I mean, it's not like we're saying you have to glue it to your face for the rest of your life. Just put it on for an hour while you're in the theater. Think of the performers. God, it drives me crazy. There've been a couple of venues where it's been an issue and really pisses me off. Not that you could tell from.
I mean, I have to say that has been an issue that I've noticed as well. The masking issue is sort of a big deal. And I've seen at some venues, the house manager makes the talk about masking part of their preamble, but in other venues they haven't. And in those venues, I've noticed that's where people are not masking, or it's harder to enforce. And sometimes some people aren't going to do it, and then
just assholes.
It's hard because it shouldn't be the volunteer that has to do it. But on the other hand, I know that the house managers are exhausted, but just like they used to have to fight with people about the late call issue, it's kind of in the job description, unfortunately.
At one venue,
Armin has something.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add, maybe it's been my luck, but I actually haven't noticed that. I've seen 15 shows and counting, and I haven't noticed a single person defiantly not wearing their mask in the theater or anything of that nature. Maybe it's just the shows that I'm seeing or the spaces and the times that I'm there.
Yeah.
But I was actually expecting way more. But as someone who has been a venue manager at the Fringe in the past as well too, and knowing that dealing with the diversity of perspectives and audiences that show up, I've been very pleasantly surprised actually to say that I've had a different experience overall at the festival.
I'm glad.
So,
I'm glad. Steve.
I saw this come up on Twitter. Like, people were discussing the fact that they'd seen a couple of people not masked. The first day, maybe second day, I think I saw one or two people. But I said, all right, I'm going to start keeping an eye out. If I see someone in the audience not wearing a mask at 1 minute to showtime, I'll get up in front of the crowd and remind people that if a performer gets sick, that's the end of the festival for that production. So please keep your masks on during the show. But I'm very happy to say I haven't had to do it once. The front of house managers of the venues I've been going to, certainly since day 3 onwards, I've been saying something in the line before people go in. A couple of them have said something right before the show starts. I've been fringing almost 20 years now, and I used to, back in the aughts, when we were getting used to cell phones in audience, in theater spaces, at 1 minute showtime, I would get up and politely remind people to please turn off their phones and enjoy the show. And some front of house managers and house technicians, well, there were polarized opinions about that. And the Fringe started doing themselves. And I'm very glad to say I haven't had to do that once at the festival, remind people to put their masks back on. So
one of the shows that I was at a venue where it had been an issue in the first couple of days, and I think it was the front of house manager came in with a box of masks and tweezers and walked up and down looking to make sure. And I have to sit in the front row because I can't walk upstairs, so I can't see behind me. But I'm sure that was a big incentive for people to quickly get their masks on, because God, you wouldn't want to be the person who.
Well, I mean, it's like Steve was saying. If somebody gets COVID, that's the end of their Fringe festival. And I know there was one show that had to cancel the rest of their run. Now, we don't know why that is, but it seems very likely that it's
well, there's another show that canceled today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
as you said, we don't know, but
yeah.
I mean, the first thing that goes through your mind is, was it COVID?
Do you know which show it is that canceled, Ken?
It was Erica. I know there was Erica.
And then something canceled at Factory yesterday.
Yeah.
Whose bag is it?
Oh, whose bag is it anyway? Yeah. That's rough, because, you know, this is like, and this is why I was so harping on. I'm Steve, the conversation you saw on Twitter, that was me, and that this is one of the things that has been my concern. Is a lot of the venues are very small, and the actor is not masked, and so it is important to protect not just the rest of the audience, but like you said, and some of these artists are on tour. You could derail somebody's tour, not just their Toronto Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I know a couple of people who experienced the mask issues the first day, and it just really made them not want to go see anything else, which is a shame, you know?
It is a shame. It is a shame. But I mean, this is the thing, is that I was so heartened by the fact that people were going to be masked, and I'm glad to see that the vast majority of people in those theaters have been masked. It hasn't been anything where I've seen somebody not wearing a mask that it's a large group of people. It's usually 2 people or one small group. Yeah. But it always sort of fascinates me when you have one, like a person or small group of people in a sea of masked people.
I know.
Who just continues to sit there without their mask.
Yep. No, totally.
Armin, how are you for time? I just want to make sure that Armin. I want to make sure.
Yeah, I have like 2 more minutes. If there's
okay,
any,
perfect.
I just ask, and then I will run to the next.
I just really quickly want to say I've just checked the Fringe updates. Yeah, Erica Fringe Edition is canceled for the rest of the festival, and Buckets Full of Blood Fairy Tale Not for Kids is canceled for tomorrow.
Oh
Oh.
my goodness.
That's
Okay.
Fringe
Yeah.
updates.
That's tough.
All right,
That's
back
because
to
I think that Buckets Full of Blood was one of those shows that's not in the program. So they had that hurdle ahead of them as
Yes.
well, as a promotional thing.
Yeah, he
Uh,
was doing postcards at Factory
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah. That's something that I haven't seen so much of this year. Is a lot of people flyering lines. I also noticed the lack of posters, and I did hear that the lack of posters may just be the cost of printing, which is apparently astronomical right now.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're not seeing the number of posters that we used to, because it's just too expensive. Which is again,
Yeah, and a couple of postcards that people have given me have been not on cardstock. They've been on heavier bond.
mhm,
People have
yeah.
just printed themselves.
At this point, with things getting more and more expensive, you have to do what you can, especially on a
Oh, you
budget.
do, absolutely.
Yeah. Armin, you look like you had a thought.
I think I may have to. I also see my buddy getting in line for the show, so I
All
think I
right.
may have to run. But
Thank you for joining
all.
us. Thank you so much for
Of course.
joining us, and enjoy
Oh,
your show.
30
Absolutely.
seconds before you leave, Armin, because it is just downstairs. Is there something that you thought the Fringe did really well this year, or is there something you think would make it better next year?
Honestly, I would say that the new young reviewer cohort has actually been really, really wonderful and a phenomenal initiative that I've been really honored to be a part of. I believe they had over 20 individuals apply for, I think there's 5 spots, and I'm one of the 5 or 6 of us actually. And I feel like even though theater criticism may be no, not even though. Theater criticism is kind of a dying art form. I was about to say even though theater may be a dying art form, but I refuse to believe it. Having new young reviewers get exposure to different types of productions through the Fringe, whether it be a musical or a drama, and getting mentorship by phenomenal mentors and getting the opportunity to see things is really, really important. So I've really enjoyed the experience of getting to review things and starting to provide feedback and constructive feedback to the Fringe. So I've really enjoyed the experience that I've had this year. And yeah, on that note, it was lovely chatting with all of you. I'm going to run into the show because, as we know, no latecomers. For actually this year, some places are allowing latecomers.
Some
There,
are.
there are some latecomers, but you want to be there for the start of the show. I saw it
a
yesterday.
latecomer right now, not when I can avoid it. So thank
All
you all
right.
so much for
Thank you,
having
Armin.
me. It was an absolute
Thanks,
pleasure.
Armin.
Chat soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So just to keep sort of on the topic of reviews, I think this has been this. I know this was a question going into this Fringe that a lot of the performers had, which was what is the reviewing landscape going to be like? And I heard some people say, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get reviews, because now is unfortunately just Glenn Sumi because of the budgeting problems there. They haven't brought on any freelancers because they
Go.
can't pay them,
No.
and so it's good to see that there are the reviews. I really appreciate the Twitter reviews that both of you have been doing, as well as the ones that have these new sites that have popped up, which are great and wonderful, and I love those. So I'm glad to see that the reviewing space is being filled.
Yeah, I'm really glad I was able to coax Armin onto the show because
That was great.
yeah, and he's wonderful. And
Yeah.
Intermission too. I am so glad that Intermission is starting to review theater, and they've taken a little while with it. They've actually built up a cohort of through their young reviewers who are now starting to do a little bit more reviewing. And I think having Intermission as a publication, and of course the newer publications like A View from the Box is one, and Inside Toronto is another, Lights Up Toronto. It's really important that we have these organizations covering the festival because the legacy media, and some of them aren't going out to the festival as much. Though I will say the Toronto Stars coverage this year has been exceptional.
That's
been
great.
really good.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in past years, I think that the Star has seen that Now is covering and Mooney on Theater was covering, and they've sort of clawed back their coverage, which is unfortunate. But I'm glad to see they're doing more of it this year.
I'm just so happy I finally got Karen Fricker to see a Sexty Rex show because I've been talking that troupe up for years with the Toronto Theatre Critics Association, and it would usually just be me and Carly Maga saying they were so good, and everyone else saying, Oh, they do comedy? No, we didn't
Oh
see
my
that.
goodness. They've missed out on so much. And Sex T-Rex always a standout. And for me this year, seeing them do the short form sketch, which is I've only ever seen them really do like their brilliant long form pieces. So it was kind of a treat to have these little spices coming in.
Yeah.
Question for each of you. And I'll go back to the question that I first asked Armin while he was trying to get him on. What are some of the shows that have stood out for you this year? I'll start with Sam.
Do you know something? I loved the Sororan Book Club because it was all women over 50, written by a woman, directed by a woman. Man, you don't see a lot of women over 50 on the stage being just women over 50 who they're not old women, they're just women. I loved it. It maybe the script could have been a bit tighter. There are lots of things, but it has, I believe, big potential to do lots of things. It could be a movie. It could even be a TV series. I think it was in Glenn's review that he said be a TV series with a different book every week or every month or whatever. I thought that was a brilliant idea. And they could say at the end of this episode, okay, here's our next book. And then those of us who wanted to could read the book. And yeah, I really loved it for so many reasons. I just
Nice,
thought
yeah.
it was wonderful. It just made my womanly heart warm. Yeah.
Were there any other shows for you, or is that the main one that you've seen that sort of jumped out for you?
Well, I also loved One Man No Show. Steve, what are you saying? He's so bizarre and wild and totally off the wall and so funny. He'll do anything for a laugh. I love him. I love him. I loved that show. I loved that show.
So
Awesome.
that's a good segue to me because I was going to also say One Man No Show.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Fringe audiences know Two Man No Show,
Yes.
Isaac Wessler and Ken Hall. And with Ken Hall busy with TV and film commitments and not sure if he could commit to the Fringes here, Isaac is doing something solo. And Isaac Unleashed is unbridled comedy chaos.
He is. He is.
And honestly, the overlooked. I've had a couple of people ask me, "What are the overlooked shows at this festival?"
That's
And
one.
I think it is, and I think it's a geographical thing
I think so
because
too.
Crows is the furthest east and the
Mhm.
furthest venue away from where the traditional Fringe venues are. There are shows at Factory selling out. And at Tarragon's, there are lots of shows that have been selling out, and those are Fringe venues and have been for decades. But Crows is new, and a lot of people aren't going that far east because they don't want to be away from where the other venues are.
I think there's, I mean, because this is not the first time the Crows has been a venue,
Yeah.
but
It's been a
I
long
think
time.
the same. It has been a long time. It's been like 2 years, but also I think people are not used to that venue. In the first year, I think some people were like, I'll see shows at Crows. I'll choose one day to be at the Crows venue. But then you still had that traditional hub. And now it's spread out a bit more to take into the two venues
See,
of the
the
Daniel
Daniel
Spectrum.
Spectrum, it's not that far from Crows.
No.
Nope.
It's not actually that hard to get from one to the other. I mean, you do have to sort of take 2 streetcars,
Yeah.
but it's not that hard. And Crows is a lovely venue. It
It really is.
Yeah.
is.
And
Great bar.
yeah, and one of my other favorite shows is Barbara Johnston's Bubble Babs Sung from the Tub. It's just such a wonderful music cabaret with wonderful performers. It's so charming. And again, I think it's doing okay. I think it's doing well, but I think it would have done gangbusters if it had been in one of the
Yeah.
more centrally located Fringes. Because this year, with no bring your own venues, with the much fewer venues, the fact that Streetcar Crow's Nest and Daniel Spectrum with the Aki Studio and the Cora Gulon, there aren't bring your own venues, or there aren't other satellite venues nearby. Because I remember the first year that Crows was a venue, there were things up on the Danforth, there were things at a studio around the corner, and now it's like you got to make your way out to that one venue, two if you're counting Daniel Spectrum, and otherwise you're trekking back into the center. So I hope if the bring your own venues come back next year, I understand what the Fringe is trying to do by having like an east venue, a south venue with Factory, a north venue with Tarragon, and then sort of west with the Al Green. But if the bring your own venues come back next year, so there's sort of like a connective tissue of smaller venues between the other venues, I think that might help get people a little further east.
That would certainly act as sort of like a way for people to hop through into the East End, and it might be the missing piece this year. It also might be important. I mean, it's hard this year because everything is new, but I think that need to jump, take the streetcar and then the subway and then the bus, that I think for some people is also a barrier. If only there was some way that we could make that journey better, and I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, I have an answer to that. It's not an answer for everyone, but I've been using the bike share system exclusively for my fringing, and I was a little concerned at the beginning of the festival because there's the one station directly outside Streetcar Crow's Nest, and I'm like, if that's full, what am I going to do? I got to go down to Queen and sprint up the street. But it hasn't been an issue. There's been both bikes and open docks at Daniel Spectrum, at Crow's, just down the street here at Tarragon. So I've been using the bike share system very effectively to get from venue to venue. I've even programmed some that are like 40, 45 minutes between Crows and Tarragon, and I've made it just fine on bike share. And, I'm getting older. I used to be able to go from Factory to Tarragon in 8 minutes on my own bicycle. I can't do that anymore, but I've been making it from venue to venue with time to spare. Which, if you know me, during Fringe, you usually see me running up with like 90 seconds before the show.
Usually, in the past, I've transited, but this year, because it's very painful to walk, I had to wait till I could get my car share, because I share a car with Megan, and so I have to wait till the car is available. And then the issue is, okay, who has parking? Where's parking?
Mm-hmm.
That's been my determining factor.
Sure, absolutely.
Except for Al Green, I transited there. Why do they have things at Al Green?
I was just about to jump at the pet peeve with Al Green. The theater is lovely, but there's that gigantic chasm between the audience and the stage, which is a huge problem.
You pretty much in the front row need opera glasses, right?
Yeah. So there are some shows that would work just fine at the Al Green. For instance, my first show of the festival was a Korean drumming troupe. The show is called The Occasion. It's wonderful. It was a great way to start the festival because I love having a diversity of lots of different things. That show would work just fine at the Al Green. Putting a single solo storyteller or putting a single solo musician on the stage at the Al Green, and then like more than 40 feet between them and the front row, it's so hard for them to connect to the audience. The
almost
one person,
impossible.
I've seen 5 shows there. The one show that really solved the problem of the Al Green chasm was Keith Brown's show.
Yes, I saw that there.
Yeah, at the table of Keith Brown, because what he did, having spent the last 2 years doing card shows online, was he set up a table in the chasm in that great empty space, brought a couple chairs up that are seated around him. So he's got volunteers who are arm's length to do the card tricks for, and then set up cameras on the table looking at and above, and had the screen up on the stage. So he never actually goes to stage himself.
Good, wasn't it?
And it worked so well and it was still live theater because there was a great big crowd that I saw it. He solved the problem, but a lot of the other artists have had issues with the Al Green,
Oh,
and I
I
just
think
don't
I
think
think
it's a
more
lot
I think
should be
more
put there.
shows have to be able to feel empowered to say I'm doing the show in this space,
Hmm.
not on
yes,
the stage.
Well, there's an issue of lights, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
If some people, if they were doing the show there, we wouldn't be able to see them properly.
That's true. Yeah. No, that's a big problem as
or
well.
maybe
That's why you got to do the show on the stage usually.
Fringe needs to acknowledge that it's not a space to put small, intimate performances,
Yes,
I
and
mean,
absolutely.
just leave those out when they're picking who goes where.
it's centrally located. It's the staff there is wonderful,
Yeah.
but the Al
Yeah,
Green is it's not a show killer, but a show obstacle for a
yeah,
solo show.
And it certainly has to be like you do have to have, like you're saying, a larger show to make that work.
yeah.
Some
Yeah,
kind of spectacle, I think.
And it's
yeah.
great for. I mean, I saw uh, Soren Book Club there, and that was fine. And
Mm.
but I wouldn't want to see, a solo performance, something intimate.
Something like Moro Girl would not have worked in that
No,
space. That
no.
show requires the intimacy that Alia gets in the solo room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The
that
other
really
space
was a
that
wonderful show.
it really is. The other space that is not working for me, I have to say, is the Daniel Spectrum. And the reason why it's not working, I mean, the theaters in there are wonderful. The problem for me is the absolute chaos of
of
that
the
indoor
lineup.
space. You have
Yes,
the postscript lounge ish, whatever they're calling it, and then you've got people milling around there, and then you've got like a box office table as well as the tables for the check-ins for the shows and all the people milling around. It is this mad chaos. You have
Mm.
the people who are in there at the lounge, not masked because they're eating and drinking, and then like it's just like this wild chaos that just it feels like
Yeah,
it's impossible to feel fringy there.
I'm not sure what happened. My understanding, and the festival seemed to be promoting the fact that there was going to be an outdoor patio at Daniel Spectrum, and then from day one, that hasn't happened.
Yeah,
no,
Um,
there is the outdoor space,
yeah,
with,
but it's not
but it
being
hasn't been
used.
used at
but
all.
Yeah,
it's not a patio.
Yeah,
and we have to acknowledge the fact that Daniel Spectrum is a community center, like the Al Green, and there are
Yeah,
people there who have no interest in attending a Fringe show and who are going
yeah.
about their business. And some, the Fringe might have gotten a couple of walk-ups because just this afternoon when I was there to see. Oh God, what did I just see there?
no,
It probably means something.
no, I know.
But I came out of this show. I saw Two Robs, One Cup, Victoria Villanosi's show. And when I came out of the show, there was a woman who was just sort of seemed to be walking by, and she stopped at the table and was like, "So what's all this? What's going on here?"
Mm, yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that's a plus for the Fringe, but I do agree that it's a little
Yeah,
weird in that
and
way.
and in the blurb about the venue, I think that's where I saw it. It said there would be a snack bar with delicious vegan comfort food. Sorry if anyone's a vegan.
Yeah. No,
I
it's
will
I don't
say
want
the
to
food
be.
across the street at the street festival there, the Regent Park
Oh
Street Festival.
God, they have,
Mm,
listen, at their markets and their festivals, because I live near Cabbagetown and
Mm,
lived in Cabbagetown for years. They have amazing food, and I personally would have contacted someone in the community and said, arrange for those women that cook that amazing food and have that
yeah,
available. Oh
sure.
God, just
Absolutely.
amazing stuff.
Absolutely. Just to continue some questioning about some shows. One of the questions
mhm.
I asked Armin was about shows that surprised you. Were there any shows that you didn't expect that you went to, you hadn't heard of them before? There's shows that have surprised you this Fringe.
So I would say I feel very good about my programming this year for myself because the shows that I was really anticipating have really come through. Sketch T Rex was fantastic. The Garden of Allah, what a wonderful show! Really well written, great performances. Rebecca Perry chooses scenery wonderfully. It's a perfect role for her in that show. And
But it's
also,
different than stuff she's done,
yeah,
you
there's
know?
been a couple of shows. I would also agree with Armin, X in the Spirit. Yeah, X in the Spirit was really, yeah, it was wonderful. And at the end of the show, I went home and made a donation to Not Another Black Life as requested by the company. And the younger actor in that show, the who plays MC, the graffiti artist, her name's escaping me right now, but she was wonderful. One of the standout performers for the fest for me.
Nice.
Besides that, Flight of the Balloon-Casters kind of came out of left field for me because I know those two performers, Devin and Connor. They're both Second City veterans, very funny guys. But the show's a musical, and I didn't realize that. It's about 75% in song, and they blew me out of the water. It was, yeah.
I wouldn't say they blew me out of the water, but I enjoyed it. And I liked that it's actually a very family-friendly show.
It is.
You could take, I would say, not younger than 10 because attention span and etc. But yeah, I liked it. And I loved the cops that all of a sudden were talking with Shakespearean accents. Why? It was great. But you know what no one said is Julie had a revenge show, revenge, whatever.
Revenge comedy.
Thank you.
Yes.
I love that. Have you seen it?
It was one of my first shows at the festival because, you know, there's a couple of names that at the Fringe Festival are like connote quality, you know, you're going to get a good show. And one of those is Monster Theater. And seeing Bruce Horak, that was a surprise for me. I thought that Bruce Horak was going to be appearing in a videotaped segment or something in the show because of his busy Star Trek career. But no, he opens the show and closes it in a way, and I don't want to give anything away, but he's very much in the show.
Yeah.
That said, the show belongs to those two women. They're wonderful.
Oh God, they were fabulous. I really, really enjoyed it. You know, another one that I really enjoyed, and I actually went because I was at Factory anyway, and you know how you go. I'm not a huge sketch comedy fan. Sorry, everybody. Clip show.
Yes.
God, it was wonderful.
So I think, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Sam, but I've been watching John Blair for a very long time. I think he's one of the most underrated comedic talents in Canada. During the pandemic, he was producing his own solo comedy sketch show. It's all up on YouTube. It's hilarious. He's had a couple of viral hits, but the whole thing is great. And he made it all himself. It's just a monumental undertaking when you think of it. And he pulled a little bit from the show for the Fringe show, but there's also a lot of new material. And yeah, John is just he's so great.
It was really pee your pants funny, you know. It was just so that was my big surprise because sketch comedy.
You know, the thing is that, you know, sketch comedy isn't for everybody. I think sometimes, you know, we talk about Sex T-Rex. I often hesitate to call them sketch because of their history of doing the long form stuff.
It's their first sketch show. I know, for the Fringe anyway.
Yeah. And it's, you know, so they're just always, their work is always so good so that you always know you're going to get a good show with them.
Yeah. There was one thing I did want to bring up, and it's the Fringe's new the policy, the new lottery. It's still a lottery. The shows are still determined by lottery, but there's two different lotteries. And this year, the Fringe has mentioned this in some of the promotional stuff that they did with the Star and other outlets. But there was a lottery specifically for BIPOC performers, and I felt a little guilty after making my plan in the first couple of days. I was like, I wasn't really considering whether or not I was seeing enough of the BIPOC performers in the festival. But then I went and looked back, and I was like, more than 50% of the shows I've seen at this festival were either starring or written, created by BIPOC talent. So it's been great. And a lot of the veterans of the festival, like I think of TJ Daw, for instance, who co-created Six Chick Flicks, which is what I'm seeing later tonight.
Yeah.
You know, he's been doing the festival for 20 years, and Sex T-Rex has also been doing the festival for, you know, nigh on a decade. And these are all performers who've had a chance to grow with the festival
Yeah.
and produce the best work. So some of the BIPOC shows that I've seen aren't quite as polished because some of the performers are maybe even getting into the festival for the first time. But yeah, like Alia's show, Moro Girl, it's going to be a wonderful show. She's still sort of working it up. It's sort of in a workshop format in the Solar Room, but the material is great, and she's a terrific writer and very funny. And even though the performance that I saw, she was still script in hand for part of it because she was revising as the run goes. I absolutely would recommend it because you'll get a chance to say, "I saw it when." Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The that second lottery, or the two lottery system, I think is super important, because for many years, you could very much, there's I think there's been the hashtag Fringe so white.
Yeah.
And you see that in a lot of the fringes. If you see, if you go on a tour across the fringes, you do tend to see that the fringes tend to be white. And it's good to see Toronto Fringe sort of leading at the forefront of bringing Black, Indigenous, people of color with their shows into the Fringe, and seeking out and making that a more accessible way to get into the Fringe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things about Fringe is about experimentation. And sometimes shows will go in and they're not polished. Some shows go in and they feel like a finished product. Years ago, Kim's Convenience, when it premiered at the Fringe, it felt like a finished, polished product. Other shows feel a little rougher. Were there any shows that you saw that you felt are verging on great? They just need a little something to get there. Anything that felt almost there.
Yeah, actually, I saw Gay for Pay with Blake and Clay 2 nights ago, and it is uproariously funny. The audience was eating it up with a spoon. That's the show that Armin just ran off to see, and I hope he loves it. But the show, I don't think this is a spoiler. The show has a little bit of a seamy underbelly where it talks about like the very real anger and frustration that queer performers have when queer culture is co-opted by straight performers. Because the idea of the show is it's a seminar to teach people, straight people, how to act more gay for more pay. And there is a third act, bit of a breakdown where that comes to the fore, and it's almost there, but it was just a little bit too jarring. And I think with a little bit of massaging, that show could be a 5-star show. When if the that undercurrent of anger and frustration pops up a little bit more on the show and is a little bit more of a gradual transition. And so I've been reviewing within a tweet all the shows that I see, and I said basically that in much fewer words, and at the end said a minor quibble. And then a couple hours later, after I'd sent my tweet, I was like, oh, let's go check and see what other people have been writing. I saw that Now had posted some new reviews. I read Glenn Sumi's review, and he said he used the exact same words, a quibble. So,
Sam, how about you?
I don't know. I saw Statistics. Has anyone seen Statistics?
no, but I've heard wonderful things.
Interesting, because it's a strange concept for a musical, I thought. And I also thought that it needed to be longer, because at the end it kind of, wrap things up too quickly and too, okay, here we go. She's been like this for the whole show. Oh, now she's nice. She's been not very nice for the whole show. Oh, look, she's turned into a nice person. And oh, look, she's been a serious researcher. Oh my God, she's got cancer. She died. And it kind of felt like it happened that fast. And I would like to see a slower, more informative part ending. I also thought maybe it would be, for me, I would enjoy it more as a play than as a musical. Although the songs were great, the orchestra was wonderful, and the cast were really good. It just, it just didn't quite make it for me. Although the friend I went with loved it. She thought it was absolutely marvelous. So, there's no accounting for what we like and what we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's the wonderful thing about the Fringe. I mean, you can go see all sorts of different things, and some things are really. I mean, I know there are people. If One Man No Show was to get, say, a 5N review, and people were like, "Well, I'll go see that," Isaac
Oh,
would have walkouts. There are people who would
oh
hate that
yes.
show.
Well, when I
So
when I went, it was a pretty small house, right?
yeah,
A lot of empty seats. And the whooping and the hooting at the end, everybody was just wow. And I went with a friend who it was the first Fringe show she'd ever been to, and she said, "Well, I guess they just did that because it's Fringe." And I said, "No, no." I said they did that because they loved it. People don't hoot and whoop at Fringe if they don't like something.
That's
It's
for sure.
you know,
That's for sure.
yeah.
All right, just to start thinking about wrapping things up, the big question as we head into the final weekend of Fringe. Actually, we should talk about before we get to that the awards. And we were able to confirm today there's no Best of Fringe this year,
Right.
actually,
except
there
you
is
do have Best of Fringe at Oakville. So a couple of
Orangeville.
shows, Oakville Theater.
Yeah.
They will be able to bring a few
Oakville or
shows
Orange?
to Oakville, but the traditional Toronto at the North York Center or whatever they call it now, Best of Fringe is not happening. That's on pause this year. By the way, if any performers are watching this and Oakville approaches you, I did it last year. It's wonderful. Do it. Do it. They're wonderful people, and it is a great theater to be part of, even as this as part of their own little Fringe festival.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what we'll see? Hopefully, I don't know if there's. I mean, there have been some breakout hits. Certainly, Sketch T-Rex is on people's radar outside of the Fringe in a way they haven't been before. Garden of Vala, I'm sure, will have a life beyond the festival because some great performances, really witty writing by Stephen Elliott Jackson. Yeah,
That's another one that could be expanded into something longer and
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. But I don't know. It's really strange because I don't imagine there are a lot of artistic directors from the more established theaters in Toronto who are going to Fringe looking for stuff because with the 2-year pause, there's a backlog of material that theaters and companies wanted to produce themselves that are
Yeah.
going to take them a while to work their way through.
Yeah.
So I hope we see a lot of the standout shows of the fest move on to something else. And of course,
the not having those a show that deserved it be picked up by another theater would be a real tragedy this year, because at the very least, yes, they have a backlog of shows to work through, but a show from the Fringe could be workshopped, expanded, grown, incubated to become something that is in another season. It would be really a shame to not see some of the shows that deserve it go on to another life.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just as we draw to the close, the important question you'll hear heading into the final weekend, and it's the question that's going to be on everybody's mind, probably starting tomorrow on Thursday. What shows do people need to see if they can get tickets? What is the show that if somebody was like, you can see one show this Fringe, what would you suggest that they see this final weekend?
You go first, Steve.
Well, I know that Isaac who is brutally honest in all things, artistic and otherwise. He only had 17 tickets sold for today's show. So,
Oh no.
yeah, so he was like, I have 170 seats, so I'm going to play 170 characters in this show. And who knows, he probably did it. But yeah, you should try and pack that one in because I don't know if we're going to see that kind of show in the same way.
And that's One Man No Show?
One man, no show. Yeah, for
I
sure.
vote for that too.
Bubble Babs is wonderful. There's some real standouts in that too. Carter Hayden has, if you know the TV and film entertainment industry, he has a standout number in that show, even though it's Barbara Johnson's show. That is a real treat if you know the industry at all, Canadian industry. I'm being particular about. And the last thing I'd say is a number of shows have already left to go to the Winnipeg Festival, but there's still a couple that are around. Uh, Tonight I'm seeing Six Chick Flicks, which was the one that was co-created with TJ Dawn. I've heard wonderful things. Tomorrow I'm seeing Meatball Seance, which everyone is saying is absolutely wild. So I'm really excited for that. So I would just tell people to, mix it up and see as much as you can. I mean, go see The Occasion, the Korean. There's a sitar solo in that show that blew my mind. She was so good. I want to see her do all these Radiohead covers. Um,
Nice.
So yeah, there's that. There's dramas like Dead Broke, which was a lot of fun, a fun little genre horror thing, and Garden of Allah, of course. There's so many great comedies, and there's musicals like Flight of the Balloon Casters and John Blair. Yeah, everybody should see John Blair. But then I've felt that way for years, and sometimes going to the Fringe sometimes feels like a vindication for me. But I want to see these people exposed to wider audience, and
Yeah.
the Fringe does that.
Sam, how about you?
Definitely Clip Show, John Blair. Sororan Book Club. Juliet, a revenge comedy. Okay, I've taken up one of your days, and you can feel free to pick your own shows for the other day.
Well, I have to say, the Juliet Revenge comedy, like that show is first off written much longer, quite a bit before And Juliet. I have to say, by Pippa Mackey, who's
I know, but it's
like I know, but it's just I'm just saying that like that show, as a vehicle for Pippa originally, and now for Monster Theater, that show has been a success for a reason. So
it's so good.
the
really
writing is solid. It should be seen.
I think I counted, I might have miscounted, 16 characters, 3 actors.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Just fabulous.
There is one last thing that I'd say, and I would say, having been a Fringer for a very long time now, I started out as a volunteer in 2000, and from 2004 I've been covering. This is my first year just as a patron. I bought my pass, and I'm only seeing what I felt like seeing, and I'm loving it. It's great because I'm not going home and writing or editing things until 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and posting them at 9 a.m. and getting a couple hours sleep and then starting all over again. But the Transact Club, the fact that the Transact is once again the Fringe Club, just warms my heart. And the fact that it's officially outside. It used to be that it was supposed to be inside, but everyone would go outside and around the corner to smoke a joint and talk about the show and maybe sneak a beer out there. And now there's an actual patio, so it's relatively safe because you're outdoors. And there have been lots of performers there, and there's been people chatting up and performers cross-promoting and giving each other community. Oh, that's something else that I did want to mention. The Fringe did this really cool thing this year where they got funding for community tickets to give away to artists who might otherwise be spending the money that they make on their show to see other people's show. So it's been a little easier for the artists to see other artists in the festival, and the Fringe is such a great cross-pollination already of artistic talent in this city that I love the fact that for the performers and the theater creators who've had a rough couple of years, there's been something that's made their lives just a little bit easier in going to see things themselves and enjoy themselves at the festival. So
absolutely,
my last tip would be go to the Fringe Club. I won't be there tonight because I'm going to be here till late and I got to work early tomorrow. But tomorrow I actually have a block of time because I'm leaving town on Friday, where I'm going to go to the Fringe Club and just chat with people and talk about what they've seen. And I know there's going to be some shows that I won't get to see before I leave. And though I'll be at 32 or 33 by the time I leave on Friday. So go see some stuff. Yeah. Enjoy yourself.
Well, Sam,
to hang with my grandkids so that I get to go see stuff. So
nice. Nice.
That's what I'll be doing.
Well, Sam, Steve, thank you so much for joining me. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate your perspective and thanks for seeing shows and reviewing them, even though you're sort of doing it on your own.
It's
Um,
been
it's been a lot of fun, and I also want to encourage people to promote the pest coverage that the Fringe is getting. The Star, Now Magazine, My Entertainment World. I think Kelly Bedard is seeing 40 plus shows, which is
wow.
incredible. Um, a view from the box, Intermission. It's so great. We have to nurture and support Intermission, because now that they're reviewing, if something were to happen with any of the other legacy medias, that is the publication that people should be looking towards for
Yeah.
quality coverage of the city's theater scene. Besides all the talented and hardworking bloggers who are doing their own thing. So, yeah, share and promote on social media this
Yes.
the press coverage that the Fringe and the shows are getting, and hopefully we'll get more of it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you both. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Including
Phil.
yours, including Stage-Worthy.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
You're doing a great job too, Phil, even though
Thanks
you're
very
not
much.
reviewing.
Thank you. All right, guys. Have a good one. Thanks so much.